Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please stand for the arrival of the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terence M. Drew, and Mistress Diani Prince Drew, as well as Her Excellency Dame Marcella Liburd, GCMG, JP, the Governor General of St. Kitts and Nevis. Please remain standing as we honor our nation with the singing of the national anthem of St. Kitts and Nevis, performed by Mr. Jim Maury Isaac, accompanied by Mr. Royal Pemberton.
Strength of will and love, with God in all our struggles, Saint Kitts and Nevis be a nation bound together with a common destiny. As stalwarts we stand for justice and liberty, with wisdom and truth we will serve and honor thee. No sword nor spear can conquer, for God will sure defend. His blessing shall forever to posterity extend, to posterity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pemberton. You have the voice of a St. Paulian. Mr. Isaac, sorry. Please remain standing for the opening prayer. I now invite Pastor Clive Saunders, Senior Pastor of the Unique Touch Christian Center, to lead us in prayer.
Let us bow our heads as we pray. The songwriter penned these words: through the sunshine and the rain, we have made it. Through the sickness and the pain, we have made it. We could not make it by ourselves. We had to ask the Lord for help. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. We have made it. Father, as we celebrate your goodness towards us as a nation for 42 years, we say thank you. Thank you for keeping us. Thank you for protecting us. Thank you for sustaining us. And thank you for guiding us. Father, if it had not been for you on our side, where would we be as a nation? You have been mighty good to us. For that, we thank you and praise you this evening. We thank you for another great opportunity to be here at another Prime Minister's Independence Lecture Series under the theme Perpetual progress, a sustainable future in view, Independence 42. Father, we pray for everyone who would be taking part this evening. Open up our hearts and minds to receive from our esteemed guest speaker as she shares her words of wisdom with us. I pray that her words of wisdom will not fall on deaf ears, but we will be quick to grasp what she says so that we can be a better nation as a result. Bless the furtherance of the proceedings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Saunders. I now consider this program blessed. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, have a seat, please. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. Can I hear it back, please? Thank you. On behalf of the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Terence M. Drew, it is my honor to extend a warm welcome to each of you at this 27th Prime Minister's Independence Lecture Series. We are privileged to be joined by Her Excellency Dame Marcella Liburd, GCMG, JP, Governor General of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terence M. Drew, and Mistress Diani Prince Drew, the Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Miss Lanine Blanchett, their Lordships, the Honorable Chief Justice and Resident High Court Judges, Her Honor, Mistress Hyleta Liburd, Deputy Governor General for Nevis, and Mr. Liburd, Honorable Members of the Federal Cabinet, Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Handley, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education et al., and Mistress Handley, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzil L. Douglas, Senior Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs et al., the Honorable Conris Maynard, Minister of Public Infrastructure et al., Honorable Marsha Henderson, Minister of Tourism et al., Honorable Samuel Duggins, Minister of Agriculture et al., and Mistress Duggins, Honorable Senator Garth Wilkin, Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, and Mistress Wilkin, Honorable Senator Dr. Joel Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development et al., Cabinet Secretary Dr. Marcus L. Natta and Mistress Natta, the Right Excellency and Right Honorable Sir Kennedy A. Simmons, National Hero, Miss Willa Liburd Tavernier, our esteemed lecturer for this 27th Annual Prime Minister's Lecture Series, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, ambassadors and high commissioners, heads of regional and international organizations with diplomatic status, honorary consuls, and distinguished members of the judiciary, Ms. Thelma Richard, Head of Civil Service, Mr. Carlton Poxon, Financial Secretary, permanent secretaries, senior officials of government, heads of statutory bodies and commissions, Mr. Coyote Sutton, Acting Commander of St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force, Mr. James Sutton, Commissioner of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, and members of the High Command, Mr. Spencer Isaac, Acting Commissioner of His Majesty's Prison, Mr. Romel Williams, Acting Chief Fire Officer of the St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services, Mr. Kennedy De Silva, Comptroller of St. Kitts and Nevis Customs and Excise Department, Mr. Timothy Anton, Governor of the ECCB, members of the clergy, bishops, and other regional religious leaders, members of the Independence 42 Organizing Committee, members of civil society organizations, students and teachers from our various educational institutions, both in the St. Kitts and Nevis, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen all. We are truly grateful for your presence here this evening. I am your host, Charissa Caesar from the Republic of St. Paul's, and it is my privilege to serve as your host for tonight's program. This lecture series has become a hallmark of our independence celebrations, a space where ideas, scholarship, and leadership converge. It gives us the chance not only to reflect on how far we have come as a nation, but to chart where we must go together. The theme for Independence 42, Perpetual Progress, a Sustainable Future in View, Independence 42, captures just that. It reminds us that independence is not a single milestone, but a living journey, one that demands vision, responsibility, and a collective effort. And so, tonight is more than an academic exercise. It's about bringing this room of leaders, citizens, students, and friends of our nation into one shared conversation. A conversation about who we are, what we value, and the future we are determined to build together. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to this 27th annual Prime Minister's Independence Lecture Series. I now invite Ms. Denal C. Laplace, the winner of the Independence 42 theme competition, to introduce our distinguished speaker for this evening. Please clap as we welcome Ms. Laplace.
Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing our guest lecturer for the evening, Ms. Willa Liburd Tavernier. Ms. Willa Liburd Tavernier is the Research, Impact, and Open Scholarship Librarian at Indiana University, Bloomington. She's the proud mom of 2 boys, Camry and Wilson, and a dedicated daughter of St. Kitts and Nevis. A recipient of the St. Kitts and Nevis State Scholarship in 1995, she studied law at the University of the West Indies and the Norman Manley Law School, later being called to the bar in St. Kitts and Nevis and the British Virgin Islands. Her academic journey also includes a Master of Laws in International Legal Studies from American University and a Master of Arts in Library and Information Science with honors from the University of Iowa. Willa's career spans law, academia, and librarianship. She served as a legal officer at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, became a partner at O'Neill Webster Law Firm in the British Virgin Islands, and later transitioned to librarianship at Indiana University. Today, she specializes in advancing equitable access to scholarly information and building inclusive knowledge infrastructures, work that directly supports the Sustainable Development Goals and the achievement of those goals for small island developing states such as ours. She also teaches, mentors students, and provides research impact services for faculty and administration. Internationally recognized, Willa has delivered lectures and presentations across North America, Europe, and the Caribbean, and serves in leadership roles with major organizations such as the Scholarly Publishing and Academic Resources Coalition, also known as the SPARC, the North American Serials Interest Group, the NASIG, and the Society of Scholarly Publishing, SSP. In 2023, Willa was named a Library Journal Mover and Shaker for her work facilitating open educational resources and the development of public open digital scholarship projects. Her active engagement in digital humanities work and public scholarship led her to designing, launching, and managing the Land Wealth Liberation digital resource about the experiences of Black Americans in building communities and wealth in the United States. The digital resources were covered by several noteworthy outlets, including Ebony Magazine and Fox News. Willa has also worked with the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College's library services to launch a digital exhibit that features Kittitian and Nivision authors and their work, and has extended this effort into building a trusted digital history of the college. This digital history project will be a collaborative effort between the CFBC and Indiana University libraries, serving as a case study in cross-collaboration between different types of higher education institutions. The project will explore participants' perceptions of the CFBC and its library as trustworthy stewards of information, while also documenting the process of developing the digital history itself as a resource. Through her research, mentorship, and global advocacy, Willa exemplifies how homegrown talent from St. Kitts and Nevis can shape international conversations while remaining deeply committed to national development. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our distinguished lecturer, Miss Willa Liburd Tavernier.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming out. Observing the protocols that have been established, please permit me to specially recognize Her Excellency Dame Marcella Liburd, GCMGJP, Governor General of St. Kitts and Nevis, and the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew and Mrs. Diane Drew. I'm delighted to be standing here to give this lecture. It does feel like a full circle moment because, as some of you may know, I started my career here as a legal officer at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. I wish to congratulate the federal government of St. Kitts and Nevis, and in particular the Independence Committee, for their excellent planning of this and other events to come, and to indicate that I appreciate their gracious hospitality. I'm grateful for the opportunity to stand here with everyone tonight, and I hope we'll be able to have a conversation. I want to share with you a question that has been driving my work, which is, who owns our stories? In a world where information travels at the speed of a touchscreen and shapes everything from economic opportunity to national identity, this question has never been more urgent. So I have titled my lecture, Perpetual Progress Toward a Sustainable Information Ecosystem. Who owns our stories in the digital age? Let me begin with a confession that might surprise you. When I was a child, I refused to learn to read. Yes, I was a stubborn kindergartner who told my teacher that I didn't have to learn to read because my mother and my sister read to me every night. And anything that I needed to read, well, they could read for me. My parents, of course, had other ideas, so they promptly stopped reading to me. And that itself passed on information that I had to learn to do it for myself. And it also passed on values that they wouldn't tolerate the attitude, the laziness, or the rudeness. So information encodes our values. As a matter of fact, most of the information we learn doesn't come through formal channels. It comes through informal social networks. Networks like our families, our schools, our churches, voluntary organizations, sports teams, and other organizations like this. So I was fortunate and privileged to have that strong social network. Aside from my family, I had an excellent educational foundation at the Tucker Clark Primary School, which was then the Newtown Primary School. I also had a good church community in the Wesleyan Holiness Church. I had friends from the various communities that I grew up in or adjacent to like Ponce Pasture, Bird Rock, and Irish Town, where my grandmother resided. And I had and still have a network of close female friends who have been my support for about 40 years. This social and emotional structure is very important, and I'm going to return to that topic later in my speech. About a decade after I left the central bank and went into private practice in the British Virgin Islands, I was having one of those deep reflective conversations with my girlfriends, and one of the things we were asking each other was, if you weren't doing what you're doing now for work, for your career, what would you do? And we all had different answers. One person said they'd be a veterinarian, and I said I'd be a librarian without hesitation. It wasn't just that I had come to learn to love books, which I did. It was also a fascination with information and with organizing it and helping others access it. Information powers our world. It shapes what we believe about the world and also what the world believes about us. This is why often when someone has a problem that they're having difficulty in solving, they share information about it. Whether they're sharing it in the news media or on social media, they're sharing it to try to influence how others might feel about a certain topic. They want to shape our views, perhaps to gain some advantage. Taking that concept into the economic sphere, when someone wants to start a business, one of the first things they do is market research. And the information that they find is going to influence their decisions. When people want to take a vacation, perhaps to lovely St. Kitts and Nevis, they do research about the destination. If they want to book a hotel, they ask for recommendations or they read reviews. Government runs on information too. If you want to visit St. Kitts, you have to provide information to immigration and customs. If you want to renew a document like your passport, a driver's license, you have to provide information. When you can't get the information you need, or when you get incorrect information, it becomes frustrating. If you've ever shown up at a business or a government department and you're turned away because they told you, no, you don't have the correct information, you don't have the correct documentation, you get understandably upset. On the other hand, when information flows properly, it's a relief. For example, our new e-border system, which I had the privilege of using for the first time on this trip, we're able to provide the information ahead of time in the application. And so when we come through immigration and customs, it is seamless. Having good information systems is quite a relief. The way a piece of information is presented can convince you that something is right or wrong, good or bad, valuable or worthless. It can convince you that something is desirable and you should work to attain it, or the opposite. So information often comes with a value judgment about something. That's exactly why we have the concept of social media influencers to shape how people think. And this is why information literacy is so essential, because not every piece of information is true or honest or fairly presented. Foundational questions for information literacy include: who controls the story? What do they want me to believe? Why do they want me to believe it? And what should I do about it? Stories are powerful. They can shape our world. Take, for example, Caribbean tourism. The Kittitian researcher, Dr. Jessica Swanston Baker, documents how St. Kitts and Nevis use intangible cultural heritage, primarily our masquerade, fife, and big drum, to create a story about St. Kitts and Nevis as a novel and unspoiled destination, the Caribbean as it used to be and it used to sound as a tourist product. This story positioned the Federation as a destination for the discerning traveler. But she also documents how the story reshaped our culture as performers of traditional folklore shortened performances to fit mass consumptions by hotels and other tourist venues, and for other popular events like birthday parties and the like, as recounted to her by the late national archivist Maria Victoria O'Flaherty. Dr. Swanston Baker shares an even more personal story in her remarkable book called Island Time. She talks about searching for information about her Nivision grandfather, Santoy, a folk singer. And after digging through uncatalogued field notes in the archives of an American university, she finally found a brief note about his work. There it was. Proof of his life and his musical talent existed, but it was locked away in foreign collections, available mainly to academics who knew that it existed and how and where to find it. Thankfully, his music and other recordings were digitized and repatriated to the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society. But the lesson is clear. When others control our stories, access to our heritage can be limited. We must take charge of our own stories. Her story resonated with me deeply because it mirrored the work I've been trying to do with public open digital scholarship. In April 2024, at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryan College Library's annual celebration of St. Kitts and Nevis authors on World Copyright Day, I was invited to speak to the audience about public open digital projects that the director, Mrs. Sonita Daniel, and her team and I were working on. On that occasion, I shared that my interest in public open digital scholarship started in library school. Specifically for my dissertation, I looked at how digital tools can build or rebuild national identity with a focus on memory institutions in the West Indies. And I must acknowledge the help and support, again, of Mrs. O'Flaherty, our late national archivist, in that project. So the idea behind the project was questioning who controls representation of our countries, our culture, and our heritage. And most importantly, our people. The internet is where most for information. And when they do that, what do they see, for example, about St. Kitts and Nevis? Is it tailored just for what we think an external audience likes or what to see? Or is it a full picture of all that we are? If it is not, what can we do to take ownership of that story? All or most of us engage with the digital world on a daily basis, but how are we engaging with it? As just consumers or as creators? And if we're engaging with it as creators, what are we producing? Are we engaging in creative, meaningful, and ethical ways? This is where social and emotional learning comes in. Having access to digital technology and tools is not enough. It's about the people. Social and emotional learning is a necessary foundation for digital literacies so that we can use technology in beneficial ways and so that we can present a broader image of ourselves, for ourselves, and in the process, of course, for the wider world. Sometimes, like with the Land Wealth Liberation digital resource, which I'll talk about more a bit later, we use digital, but specifically in a digital humanities classroom. At the start of the semester, one of our assignments was to find a digital project that we were interested in. So I was captivated by an interactive mapping project that mapped the Jamaican rebellions of 1760 to 1761. And if we could show that on the back monitor for the audience. And so what this mapping project showed is that this wasn't a series of opportunistic rebellions, but it was actually a highly coordinated and strategic campaign that was waged by the slaves at that time. And of course, for me, what that made me think of is our own Buckley's Uprising. And what if we had that sort of interactive map to show how in that uprising, what the movements were from estate to estate. Our archives has worked to some extent to produce some digital information from archival texts, but we can do so much more. For example, that uprising sparked labor rebellions across the entire West Indies to the point where by 1838, by 1938, the British Crown had to appoint the Moyne Commission to look into working conditions across the entire West Indies. But if you look at most West Indies textbooks, the Buckley's Uprising is relegated to a footnote, even though it was pivotal not only for St. Kitts, but for the entire West Indies. So we have to tell our own stories. For my capstone project in this digital humanities class, I looked at West Indian identity through the lens of cricket. The process exposed some concerns. For example, the database tools did not recognize Caribbean dialects as languages, so there wasn't much language analysis that I could do. Critical materials at the University of the West Indies CLR James Cricket Research Center were not digitized, which limited my research. By the time I could make the trip to visit the CLR James Cricket Library, I had to have done most of the groundwork for that project, so I relied heavily on ESPN Cricinfo, which again is a foreign-owned tool that, while freely available, it lacks the depth of the curated collections at the Cricket Library, and it also has no West Indian edition. Even photographs of historic West Indies cricket matches are mostly out of our control. One striking example, Joe Solomon, the West Indian cricketer who tied a historic test match against Australia, had no copy of the iconic photo of that moment. But the Australian cricketer, Ian McKiff, who he threw out, has a copy framed just inside his front door. The copyright to that image is owned as I found, most of the images of West Indian cricket of that time are owned by Getty Images, which is a foreign source. If you want one of those pictures, you will have to pay them for it. So it's ironic that the dominant era of West Indies cricket, our age of anti-colonialism and independence, remains digitally dependent on foreign powers and sources. For the project, I created data visualizations that revealed our West Indian identity of a warrior spirit, excellence in performance, determination, and anti-colonialism arose out of West Indies cricket of the 1960s and 70s. And if you scroll a bit on that page, you can show some more of those data visualizations that I created. And, okay, I'll give him a chance to pull it up. And so basically, I was mapping literature and film about West Indies cricket and doing thematic analysis to show the themes that emerged. However, by contrast, look at the representation in this next photo. In writing about the West Indies cricket team's first tour of England, which the West Indies lost, Professor Hilary Beckles highlights this cartoon by A.E. Morton, which pictured leading English cricketer W.G. Grace. And Dr. Beckles said, The representation of W.G. Grace as an imperial master, disciplining an insolent, childlike native, located cricket in England at the center of colonial discourse, particularly the legitimacy of colonial rule and white superiority ideology. So when others control the narrative, they tell the story that they want. Therefore, it's important for us to tell our own stories. In 2022, a project that I conceived and managed, the Land Wealth Liberation Digital Resource, was launched. It had a much wider impact than I imagined, being eventually picked up by regional and national news media. Now, the mainstream narrative about Black Americans is that they are lazy, especially poor Black communities in particular, is that they are lazy, they are immoral, they lack the work ethic and discipline to achieve progress and prosperity. And this allows society to dehumanize them and treat them without care. Our research showed a completely different story. Individuals, organizations, and neighborhoods work time after time to build community after community. And each time, these were destroyed through white violence or through state appropriation of land for parks, like Central Park, that was built on a historic Black community, Seneca Village, for lakes or for highways, and through discriminatory or predatory financial practices. A deliberate pattern that spanned 200 years, continuing into the present day, designed to prevent Black American progress. Many of those stories have been documented for decades, but they remained hidden, either because they are in texts inaccessible to the public or because the mainstream media has no interest in telling those stories. Pulling these stories together and making them publicly available in a digital, accessible format transformed the narrative. We now have the tools at our fingertips, literally, to tell our stories. But in our region, we are only just starting to talk about the social and emotional learning that is the necessary foundation for us to use these tools in productive ways. So late last year, in October 2024, CARICOM and the Caribbean Development Bank and regional partners convened a symposium on decolonizing education, social and emotional learning, and artificial intelligence with the aim of creating an agenda for action. Such an agenda is needed. We need to ensure that the next generation has the social and emotional skills we need to understand ourselves, to understand how and why to relate to others in an appropriate way, and to make thoughtful and responsible choices and decisions, including those about how we engage with digital media and digital tools. We also need more robust support systems for vulnerable children and individuals who may be suffering from neglect, hunger, or abuse. Because children and people cannot perform in a productive way if those supports are not there. Without social and emotional learning and support systems, no matter what new technologies are available to us, progress will be hampered. Why? This social and emotional learning determines whether we engage with information and others in creative, ethical, and meaningful ways, or ways that are destructive, disrespectful, divisive, or abusive. It undergirds information literacy, which is what determines how we process information and if we can evaluate it effectively. It is the foundation. It is the thing that determines if I can detect a piece of misinformation, but also how we behave towards each other when we disagree about a piece of information. Our social and emotional literacy determines the choices we make around consuming information and the choices we make when we produce information. When I was growing up, I was often told a story about how Robert Bradshaw, the late Honorable Robert Bradshaw, banned television in St. Kitts with the view that we should not have that technology until we created and produced content of our own. Usually because our parents thought we were watching too much TV. But despite what you may think about that view that he took or that story, I do see the value and the power of trying to make thoughtful decisions about what information we consume and what we produce. Because just like food, you are what you eat, you are what you consume. So here are some reflection questions, primarily for young people, but useful for anyone who's using digital media to help make thoughtful decisions. Before you share, what story are you telling about yourself on social media? What is your information diet? What apps, websites, or accounts do you follow daily? Who created that content, and what is it that they want you to believe? What is the algorithm pushing towards you on TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram? What is the story it's trying to tell? Is the story accurate? Is it missing information? Because, sometimes the algorithm makes us want something that doesn't even really exist. Before commenting or sharing, ask, would this make someone feel better or worse about themselves? What is my motivation for saying this? Before sharing news or information, ask, who originally reported this? Can I find 2 other legitimate sources? What stories do you know? Maybe from a parent or grandparent, aunt, uncle, or community member that are not written down anywhere? And how can you help preserve them? What is your creator versus consumer balance? This week, did you spend more time consuming content or creating something original? What digital skills do you want to develop to help tell better stories or solve a problem that affects you, your community, or society? Finally, I want to talk about cultural information. This is one of our most precious assets. For decades, our Ministry of Culture has been working to preserve cultural heritage. As part of the Sustainable Island State Agenda, in 2023, a milestone grant of over US $91,000 in funding was obtained by the federal government to safeguard intangible cultural heritage items, and this is a milestone that should be celebrated. By 2025, a draft National Intangible Cultural Heritage Policy Framework covering diverse cultural practices has been prepared. Now, here's another story that shows why this is so important. One January, I was sharing videos of masquerades with coworkers because I love our folklore and I like to share it. And one of my coworkers who has a PhD in drum making in Dominican Republic exclaimed, that's Guloya. It's from the Dominican Republic. By way of background, the Dominican Republic has identified 5 items of intangible cultural heritage, from cassava bread making to the Kokolo dance drama tradition, also called Guloya. The chant, Goliath Dead, from our David and Goliath folklore performance, when said with the Dominican accent, sounds like Goliath Dead. And that's where the name Guloya comes from. They do acknowledge that this was brought to the Dominican Republic by English-speaking sugarcane workers like St. Kitts, and that there's currently only one troop left in San Pedro de Macorís. And they thought that this tradition was so precious that they had it recorded as part of the UNESCO Intangible World Heritage Project as part of the intangible cultural heritage of the Dominican Republic. Shouldn't we also be leading in preserving and showcasing our masquerade and folklore traditions and other traditions on the world stage? Yes. With the grant and the Intangible Cultural Heritage Policy Framework, we are now better positioned to do so. The late director of the National Archives of St. Kitts and Nevis, Victoria O'Flaherty, in her thesis titled Their Archives and Ours, Relevance of Archives in Post-Colonial St. Kitts, described the need to recover historical information about our people as essential for the construction of a history that will sustain national identity. If we really care for, protect, and pass on our cultural heritage, there's a world of benefit for us. And it is heartening to see this as part of the Sustainable Island State Agenda 2040. It is a way of opening up a number of areas. It is an excellent way to garner more tourism interest. Tourists are seeking unique cultural experiences. It is also a way of helping to make our education system more relevant to our children when we incorporate these cultural traditions. It has a lot of promise for use in a number of ways. And even if those ways are not profit generating, but they can be, they're still important because not everything that has value can produce profit. So if we're honest, we can do more. We can do more to support our cultural heritage information. The creative talent within our federation is amazing, and on an individual level, there are a lot of people who are producing uniquely culturally relevant goods. But information about these are not always readily available to us or to visitors. Our young people also have the digital skills and expertise to translate cultural information into new media that can have a wide impact on education, society, industry, and identity. But we have to have a vision for doing this and provide the systems and resources to make it possible. Can we pledge to invest as much in our libraries, archives, and museums as we invest in our music festival and carnival? Similarly, we can do more to make government information accessible, transparent, and accurate. We have excellent websites for citizenship by investment, for returning nationals, and we can continue to develop websites that relate to the various government systems that we all have to interact with every day and to provide trusted and accurate information in that manner. We have a wonderful new e-border system that provides a wealth of information. We should be able to use that information to track visitors and immigrants and ensure that not only our laws for entry, but our laws for leave to remain and when you are to depart are being complied with. The same would apply to free movement of workers. This is a valuable resource. We should be tracking the areas in which we have high numbers of immigrant labor and ensure that we are providing adequate training for the next generation to fill some of those jobs in the future. In conclusion, whether we're talking about cultural heritage, business development, tourism, government service delivery, information is the foundation upon which progress is built. If we care for our stories, invest in our information systems, and cultivate literacies that help us engage wisely, we will ensure that the next 42 years of independence are not just about surviving, but about thriving. So I return to the question I began with. Who owns our stories? My answer is this: we must own them ourselves. We must tell them ourselves, preserve them ourselves, and share them ourselves. For us, for our children, for our neighbors, and for the world. That is how we build a sustainable information ecosystem. That is how we secure perpetual progress. And that is how we honor the gift of independence. Thank you, and may God bless our federation.
Thank you, Ms. Liburd Tavernier, for your powerful words and such a thought-provoking presentation. Your words remind me that progress is not abstract, rather it is built by a people, policy, and purpose, as well as technology. We will now hear a response to the lecture from the Honorable Conris Maynard, Minister of Public Infrastructure, Energy and Utilities, Domestic Transport, Information, Communication, and Technology and Posts.
Honorable Prime Minister and your lovely wife, Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, and your lovely wife, my colleague, Honorable Marsha Henderson, Attorney General Garth Wilkin, and your lovely wife, Honorable Samuel Duggins. I know your wife's not here tonight, but they mentioned it earlier. My cabinet colleague, Honorable Dr. Joel Clark, Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Marcus Natter, and your lovely wife. And of course, to my beautiful, lovely wife, Mrs. Shamara Morton Maynard, the Diplomatic Corps, Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, I note Ambassador Kenny Douglas and Ambassador Leon Natter, all distinguished guests, high-level members of the government, of the clergy, invited guests, students, permanent secretaries, all a pleasant good evening to you. So tonight we were treated to a lecture of remarkable depth, vision and patriotism, delivered by none other than our very own Miss Willa Liburd Tavernier, a proud daughter of our soil, whose journey is a true embodiment of what it means to rise from humble beginnings here in Bastia, in the smallest, I hear, new town, in the smallest independent nation in the Western Hemisphere, and take her rightful place on the global stage. I must first pause to acknowledge the extraordinary life and accomplishments of Miss Miss Liburd Tavernier. Her biography reads like a tapestry woven with brilliance, resilience, and an unrelenting pursuit of excellence. From her state scholarship in 1995, through her legal education at University of the West Indies and Norman Manley Law School, her calling to the bar of St. Kitts and Nevis and the BVI, her tenure as a senior legal officer at the ECCB, her rise to partner in private legal practice, and her bold pivot into academia and librarianship at Indiana University. Every chapter of her journey echoes the story of perpetual progress. She's not only a jurist, an academic, and a global thought leader, but also a mentor, a visionary, and a champion for equitable access to information. Her work democratizing knowledge and safeguarding the stories of small island states like ours is nothing short of revolutionary. What a joy, what a privilege to celebrate Independence 42 with such an outstanding Kittitian vision at the podium. Colleagues, tonight's lecture, Perpetual Progress Towards a Sustainable Information Ecosystem, Who Owns Our Stories in the Digital Age, invited us to confront an urgent truth. Progress is not only measured in GDP growth, in infrastructure, or in physical development. Progress is also measured in our ability to tell our own stories, to preserve our culture, and to control the information that shapes our identity as a people. Ms. Liburd Tavernier has eloquently highlighted to us that information encodes values. Information encodes values. Powerful. Effectively, what you put in is what you get out. The information we consume defines us. Therefore, our learned speaker tonight has admonished us to consume and share our own information. This information must tell the world not only what we do, but who we are. If we relinquish control of our narratives, then others will define us, sometimes inaccurately, sometimes unjustly, and often incompletely. Our speaker tonight has crystallized the point that if we carelessly consume information without discernment, we risk becoming passive consumers of someone else's imagination of who we are, instead of active creators of our own destiny. It sort of reminds me of how the movies always portrays Caribbean people, by having them in a tropical shirt speaking in a fake Jamaican accent. Colleagues, what we heard tonight is not merely an academic discussion. This is a patriotic call. In a world where the stories of our masquerades, our fife, our Buckley's uprising, our cricket legends, our music, and even our daily struggles can be locked away in foreign archives or shaped by external agendas, our esteemed speaker is rightly forcing us to ask ourselves, who owns the soul of our nation? Tonight, Ms. Tavernier has made the answer clear. We must own it ourselves. Colleagues, the theme of Independence 42 is Perpetual Progress, a Sustainable Future in View, Independence 42. Sustainability is not only about energy. It's not only about agriculture or climate resilience. It is also about cultural resilience, informational sovereignty, and national identity. For what good is it to secure renewable energy, to plant sustainable crops, or to build climate-smart infrastructure if we lose sight of our history, our values, and our stories along the way? As Ms. Tavernier so eloquently shared, Our cultural heritage, our masquerades, our folklore, our music, our oral traditions are treasures that must be documented, preserved, and celebrated on our own terms. We cannot, we must not allow others to write our stories while we remain silent. We must invest in our libraries, our museums, our archives with the same energy and urgency with which we invest in our festivals and carnivals. For both are vital to who we are. And let me say this, as a minister of government, as a patriotic Calypsonian, and as a son of this federation, I take this challenge personally. For I know, as you know, that independence is not a one-day celebration. It is a daily responsibility. It is an act of lifting our children high enough so that they can see further than we ever could. It is the courage to say we will no longer be defined by external voices, but by our own hand, our own vision, our own truth. Ms. Tavernier, your lecture also calls us to prepare our young people for the digital age. You have asked us some probing questions. What stories are we telling when we post on social media? What digital skills are we cultivating? Are we creators or mere consumers? Are we instigators or truth tellers? Is it for the likes or for the insights? These questions are not light. They are heavy with the weight of our future. For the choices of our youth and not so young make online will shape not only their individual futures, but also the very image of our federation in the global imagination. So tonight, let this be our pledge at Independence 42. We will equip our young people not only with jobs, but the wisdom to navigate information, not only with technology, but with values, not only with skills, but with a nationalistic identity. That is how we ensure perpetual progress, sustainability. And to you, Ms. Tavernier, we say thank you. Thank you for returning home with your brilliance. Thank you for reminding us that our people can compete on the world stage and still stay rooted in their love for St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you for exemplifying what our foreparents prayed for when they hoisted our flag on September 19, 1983, that sons and daughters of this soil would go out into the world, excel, and come back to strengthen the federation that gave them birth. My fellow citizens, as we look ahead, let us remember this. Independence is not the end of a journey. It is the beginning of a promise to preserve our culture, a promise to own our stories, a promise to invest in our children, a promise to ensure that when the world looks at St. Kitts and Nevis, they see not just a destination, but a nation confident, resilient, sustainable, and forever progressing. 42 years have brought us thus far. 42 years have proven that we are small but Talawa. However, 42 years are only the foundation. The real question is, what will the next 42 look like? The answer rests in our hands. So in the spirit of independence, I echo Ms. Tavernier's challenge and extend it to all of us. Let us tell our own stories. Let us own our own voices. Let us ensure that the next generation of Kittitians and Nevisians inherit not only land and buildings, but also the power of identity, the richness of our culture, and the strength of self-definition. And if I am to borrow one of our famous political voices, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, who once said in his own unique charismatic flair, talk first, talk hard, talk long, talk last, and talk again. Tell our story perpetually. May God bless Miss Willa Liburd Tavernier. May God bless you, the proud people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and may God bless our beloved St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maynard, for your insightful reflections. I must commend you for your strength this evening because just 3 days ago, he did not gain the 8th star. We took it down to St. Paul's. I admire your strength, Mr. Maynard. I truly do. We now open the floor for an interactive dialogue session. This is your opportunity to ask questions and share reflection on tonight's lecture. For your convenience, the mic is positioned in the center aisle. We kindly ask that you approach it when called upon, state your name clearly before you speak, and keep your questions or comments brief so that as many voices as possible can be heard. As you participate in this, let us keep in mind our national theme for this independence, perpetual progress, a sustainable future in view. This conversation is not only about what we have achieved, but it is also about what we will do together to ensure the future we envision becomes a reality. Time to ask your questions.
Good night, everybody. Good night, Madam Speaker. I have a question on behalf of the youth of Basse High School. How can you encourage us to become content creators more than consumers?
Yeah. Thanks for that question so much.
Sit down.
Now, even if formally in school, there might not be courses that cover every digital skill. I know you all are online, and you'd be surprised what you can learn right there online, even with just YouTube videos. A lot of the times, you know, I'm not a computer science person, right? But I have an attitude that I can figure it out, you know? So when I come upon a new software or platform that I have to use, I'll go look up the documentation. I'll go look up a YouTube video that can step me through how to do what it is I want to do. It's a great way of learning. Since you're already there watching videos, you can spend some of that time watching videos that teach something. There are also platforms like Udemy, Khan Academy. These are free that have self-paced courses that can teach you some of these digital skills. Video creation, HTML, Python, all of these. It's there at no cost to you. All you need is an internet connection.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mitchell Boren. I'm representing the Charlestown Secondary School. I'm also a Nevis Cooperative Credit Union Youth Ambassador. In regards to historical conservation, I believe we allow our historical sites, especially those from colonial rule, to become undermined in a sense. But I also believe it's the government's responsibility to change the narrative of these historical sites from the bad memory of colonial rule to now standing as the testaments of our ancestors' resilient and tenacious nature. What are your views on this?
Okay. Thanks for the question. I think it's the responsibility of all of us. And I think that government has a key role to play. And as a country with limited resources, there's a prioritization exercise that has to take place to move issues like these closer to the center, move them in from the periphery closer to the center. As I said, there has to be a vision first. Now, I know that I come from a well-resourced institution at Indiana University. And for example, the population of St. Kitts and Nevis can fit in the football stadium. So it's like a small country. For us, we have to make decisions about where we put our resources. And this is not to excuse the government, but we have to start somewhere. We have to start planning, making capital allocations so that we can get there. It is the government's responsibility, but it's also all of our responsibility. So thank you for the question.
Pleasant evening. My name is Zarik White. I am representing the Fairchild High School. I am also a St. Kitts Nevis National Youth Parliament member. My question for you tonight is, artificial intelligence tools are rapidly reshaping knowledge production. How do we ensure that Caribbean voices, culture, and perspectives are not drowned out in global knowledge ecosystems dominated by national powers?
Okay, so most artificial intelligence systems are large language models which have predictive behavior. And so a large language model sucks up content from wherever it can find it, analyzes it at an unimaginable speed, and significant burden on Earth's natural resources to give you back the answer. In terms of whether whether our stories are well represented in AI models, the answer is the same as in any other forum. The more we tell the story about ourselves, the more it will reflect in the results that we get. I honestly think we don't have to worry too much about artificial intelligence. We have to worry about what we need, and other things will fall into place. Like I said, every tool will be out there. It just depends on how we use it.
My name is Madan Alvaranga. I am representing Immaculate Conception Catholic School. I have a question for you. So right now, we have many students who want to become doctors, or there's many advanced careers, have to go abroad for these educations. Even you yourself had to. And yet we have a medical school right here in St. Kitts that many students couldn't even dream to afford to attend. What will the Kittitian government be doing, as well as in the theme of perpetual progress, to allow more Kittitian students who otherwise couldn't attend these universities to attend and become the doctors that we need here on island?
Well, I'm not qualified to answer that question, unfortunately. It is outside the scope of my expertise, but thank you for putting it out there, something for the government to think about.
Good evening. My name is Aja Liburd, and I am representing the Charlestown Secondary School. My question is, in what ways can young people in St. Kitts and Nevis be more directly involved in shaping policies for sustainable development?
That's an excellent question. I think the first thing you have to do is be well informed and get as much information as you can. There's also the Youth Parliament Association that you can get involved in. And Mr. Maynard, maybe you might want to talk a little bit more about that, perhaps.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. Yes. So, of course, piggybacking off of what you last said, the St. Kitts Youth Parliament Association is an excellent place where policy discussions can take place. In fact, Youth Parliament is where I started my own parliamentary practice, where I had the opportunity with some of my other colleagues, led at the time by Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, who's now the Minister of Education, and Mr. Ward, I remember, who brought the first cadre of students into something like that, exposing us to what it means to shape and debate policy. So that is an excellent avenue. But also within your own schools, the debating societies and these types of clubs where you can have an opportunity to start discussing the policies. And we have a very receptive ministry of youth where if you have ideas that will allow for your vision, your policy positions, if you think that they are very useful, I know that Dr. Jeffrey Hanley and the Minister of Iselin Phillip will be more than happy to welcome that discussion. And I think they have many avenues to which that could happen. So what I'm going to put Dr. Hanley on the spot, is to ensure that the schools are aware of every avenue through which they can contribute to the national debate. So that is what I would add to that particular question.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on something you mentioned in your response, which is the portrayal of Caribbean people as happy, smiling natives, especially in film or media with a fake accent. And interestingly enough, that itself is the product of a deliberate story that was told. There's a Bahamian researcher by the name of Krista Thompson who wrote a book called An Eye for the Tropics, Framing the Caribbean Picturesque. And it details how a campaign that started in the late 1800s, especially in Jamaica and the Bahamas, sort of the oldest tourist economies, now that sugar was dead, to sell the Caribbean as a particular type of destination. And they did this through photographs and postcards. And it would always show happy, smiling natives, sort of always in a picturesque landscape, as if they didn't have a care in the world. There were no struggles here to be had, just hey man, you know? And that has persisted for so long, up to the present day, because of a story, a framing that colonial governments in Jamaica and the Bahamas came up with. So that is just to show you how powerful a story is. But I see there are some more students waiting on to ask questions.
Good night. My name is Hakim Archibald. My question is, what challenges come up when trying to preserve intangible culture like language or storytelling?
Okay, so one of the challenges is where we do have a generation who participated more strongly in this that is dying out, but this has, our folklore and traditions have been documented. There's a book that has been written about this, and I apologize for not remembering the name off the top of my head. One of the ways is that we could do this is taking some of that information and translating it into other forms of information, including digital information. There's a lot of shows, well, I've seen a lot of videos produced by the Ministry of Culture about folklore and traditions, and those also can be incorporated into any digital stories that we tell. There's a wealth of information out there if you look. We do have to make a concerted effort to organize that information beyond just posting it on Facebook, YouTube, the ZIZ channels. And we have the expertise within the Federation. So I think what we need at this point is a vision, a plan, and resources to execute it, to be allocated.
Okay, then our cutoff point will be at Mr. Washington Archibald at the back for our final question.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Joelle, and I'm representing the Nevis International Secondary School. And my question is, well, my statement is, I sometimes feel that what we learn in school doesn't reflect on our reality. So how can our education system be more responsive to the rapid changes in technology?
You know, I felt the same way when I was in school, honestly. And I'm now blessed with a son who tells me that he goes to school for lunch and recess, nothing to do with their work. But what I would say about this is to appreciate the foundation that you've been given. We were the generation, we did not grow up with social media. Most of us didn't have computers in the home. I was fortunate that I did because my father was a kind of tinkerer. He liked new things, so like every new thing that come along, he would get it. So we had, an Apple Macintosh with the floppy disks that were actually floppy, and you had to do everything at the command line. So, and that was just experimentation. Now, like I said, some of the most important information that we get is not actually through formal channels. So while I think our education system can definitely equip each child with devices, for example, so that everybody's kind of on a level playing field, we can also take what we're learning in the education system and apply it to the new things you want to learn. Now, where I live, we recently, last year, we voted to add an additional 1% on our already very high property tax so that the school district would provide all of the school supplies. That's iPads, laptops, pencils, notebooks, textbooks, everything, for every child. So no child has to take anything to school except their bag and a water bottle. Everything is provided. Now, we don't pay a lot of taxes in St. Kitts. So we have to understand the difference between the resources. When we look at other places and we see they have all of those resources for, a lot of different things, 1/3 of my salary goes to federal and state taxes. We don't have that system here. So we have to appreciate that, that the resources have to come from somewhere, at the same time that we challenge the government and the Ministry of Education to keep providing more. And But conversely, the government has to be a trusted provider. If we need to change the system and create more taxes so that we can fund these sort of efforts, people have to have confidence that monies that they're paying into the system are going to be efficiently utilized and that there'll be transparency of information around this. So thanks for your question.
Michelle Boren, I'm back again. Apologies for my previous actions. I should have waited for your complete response. But my second question to you is, being a history lover, I'm very big about reparations. And I find that being an independent state, St. Kitts and Nevis does not advocate enough for its reparations. Looking from studying history in school, I've learned about things like the Manifest Destiny, in which the Americas believed that it was their God-given destiny to govern the Western Hemisphere just because they were white. And looking at slavery that lasted over 200 years, St. Kitts and Nevis funded the European Industrial Revolution. What are your views on reparations? Because the great Nelson Mandela once said, to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to enhance and honor the freedom of others.
Well, indirectly, our government is actually already working on that because CARICOM has a very strong movement for reparations, starting both with the indigenous peoples of the Americas. We don't have any significant population here anymore because after the Bloody Point massacre, most of the survivors were sent to Dominica. But CARICOM is working on reparations, so you can go and look more into that. My not politically correct answer is that actually I don't want the government to, nobody give the government any reparations. For me, if they're going to give reparations, I want the money directly. I don't know how they're going to figure that out, but thank you for your question, though.
Thank you for your answer.
Just to add, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there is a committee for reparation here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I think it is led by Carla Astafan, and I spoke with her recently because I think she went to do some studying, etc., and she came back with some exciting news, and she promised that she was going to bring it to the attention of the Prime Minister. So there's an active committee that is looking on how to advise this government in collaboration with what's happening at the CARICOM level on the issues of reparations. So perhaps you can ask a question at the end so we can direct you to that particular committee and you could get the information that is there already.
As a practical matter, of course, this is best done at a national level because then we can use any funds that we get through those efforts to build institutions that will benefit the whole society. So disregard my earlier comment. And let's have the next question.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Khalik, and I'm the representative of the Washington Archibald High School and also a member of the Turner One Agenda Men's Club. In what ways can traditional knowledge and practices contribute to modern sustainability efforts, and how can tourism be managed sustainably without damaging cultural identity and our sacred spheres?
Okay, that's a great question. And when we plan our tourism efforts, we can have those sort of guiding principles in terms of how cultural information can fit into this. Tourists are looking for genuine, authentic, and unique experiences. They're really tired of going to each island and seeing the same thing over and over again. So if we invest in building on our history and heritage and providing those experiences, that is one way our cultural heritage will contribute to sustainable development.
If I may add a plug here, I want to commend, of course, the Ministry of Tourism, who has already taken on that mantra. And I think the theme is venture deeper. And so the Ministry of Tourism, in collaboration, of course, or with the government, is saying to our visitors, come and see our unspoiled country, our unspoiled heritage, and encouraging service providers to provide what is an authentic and uniquely St. Kitts and Nevis experience, whether it is going up in the hills to have breakfast, whether it is doing our trails, the Liamiga. All of these are now part of Ministry of Tourism and the government's thrust for sustainable tourism products. I want to commend the Ministry of Tourism, led by, of course, our Minister, Marsha Henderson, on this, and this will help preserve what we already have.
Thank you.
And St. Kitts is so unique. I don't know if you've seen the annual magazine that the Ministry of Tourism puts out. The current edition highlights a lot of local creators. So if, like me, you don't know the depth and breadth of all what's there, that magazine actually it's pretty thick, and almost all of it highlights like local designers, people who are making local products, from fashion to beauty to skincare. There's a wealth of information there.
And sorry, if I may add this as well, one of the things that tourists say about coming here to St. Kitts and Nevis, we get really high appraisals or reviews because we are so small, they're able to experience a lot of St. Kitts even when they come, St. Kitts and or Nevis, even when they come here for a day. Our challenge, of course, is obviously not as many people know about St. Kitts. So someone asked earlier about content creation. One of the things that you can do is create that unique content that St. Kitts and Nevis has with our heritage and our culture, so that you can spread it around to invite people to our shores in a responsible, sustainable way.
Good night, my name is Ajorne Hodge, and I'm a Form 4 student of the Gingerland Secondary School, and I am also one of the most recently appointed St. Kitts and Nevis Child Rights Ambassador. In your speech, Ms. Liburd, you challenged us and asked us what our story was, and how do we want persons to view our story. However, sharing and rewriting our story is not always easy. As a matter of fact, we are often unheard or are being silenced. So my question is, while trying to share your story, did you ever feel ignored or unheard? And how did you stay motivated?
Yeah. That's a great question. I would definitely say yes, because I grew up sort of in the shadow of a brilliant older sister. And the weight of expectations sort of threatened to, stifle my unique self or my authentic self. And so what I would advise you to do is shut out the noise, right? Focus on what you want to do and what is within your control. It might not happen tomorrow or next year. You might never go viral. You don't need to. The real world is here. But focus on the things that bring you joy, the things that you're interested in, and getting the skills that you need to tell your story. And you'll be surprised the results that it can bring. Right? So you don't take the focus off of the fact that you may feel silenced right now. First, focus on what you want and what you can do and persevere. And that's my advice to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And if I'm to add a little to that, there's a saying, you could never keep a good man down, right? So if you have a story which you believe in, you have to keep telling it. You have to keep pursuing it, and you can never give up. There's a simple story I've heard about the case of 7-Up, the drink, where a guy believed that he had the best recipe for a drink, and he called it 1-Up. It failed. Called it 2-Up, failed. He did a little tweak, called it 3-Up, it failed. 4-Up, failed. 5-Up, failed. Try one more thing, he called it 6-Up, and it failed. And he gave up. Somebody who didn't go through all that hardship changed one little thing, call it 7-Up, and now we have 7-Up. You simply cannot give up on whatever dream you have. You have to push all the way. And finally, I will say, it's often hardest when you're about to reach the top. The most difficult part of a mountain climb is just before you reach the top. So you can never, ever give up.
And to add to what Mr. Maynard said, if you go deep down in the West, you will find 8-Up, 8 stars up in St. Paul.
You know, I
must commend, I must commend the children for tonight for asking their questions. I really like how you were audacious about what you wanted to know. It shows me that you know how to command the room, command your future, because if you look at it, you are the future and you are the now. So you have to start now to take the opportunities to ask what you want to know and shape your future for you. To lift our spirits once more, we welcome back Mr. Jermori Isaac and Mr. Royal Pemberton to share a special music selection.
Sound the trumpets from every hilltop. Play a sweet melody, paying homage to our land. Harmonize freedom voices, sing of our splendid history, our pain and our struggle, advancement or trial, from chain to liberty. Oh, let those that hear our symphony make pathway to our shores. Let them witness our majestic mountains, our fertile valleys, our crystal seas, our great fortress, our heart-loving people, courageous, proud to be. We are proud to be citizens of this land, this great land of liberty. Yes, we are proud to be citizens of this land, the jewel in the Caribbean Sea. Oh, oh, Ali, the great Gibraltar, the cradle of tranquility. We shall forever stand as one people, one nation, one God, one destiny. So blow your trumpet, lift your voices, as in unity we are proud to be. As in unity we are proud to be. As in unity we are proud to be.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I now invite our esteemed Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence M. Drew, to present a token of appreciation to our distinguished lecturer this evening, Ms. Willa Liburd Tavernier.
Good evening, all. Let me stand on the order of precedence that was already established, but allow me just to say a couple of things in 2 or 3 minutes, no longer than that. I just really want to thank our lecturer this evening, Mrs. Tavernier. Put your hands together for her. For every lecture series, I have put forward an academic of Kittitian descent who lives in the diaspora as a signal to us that wherever we are as Kittitians and Nivisians in this world, that we can still contribute meaningfully to national development. It is also to demonstrate to the world who we are as a people, that we have the depth of resources, intellectual talent, and capacity to command national attention in a forum like this. Put your hands together once again for our lecturer. She has brought a perspective and a topic that we are not often exposed to. Who would have thought that library studies, a librarian, is an academic of such importance to define a people, to define us, to say who we are, what is our identity. That has really opened up my eyes, and I know many of you here are indeed astonished by the extent to which she went to demonstrate that information, the handling of information, is critically important to determine who we are as a people. And just to add a couple of things, because I think it was important that she noted the work that she's doing with Clarence Fitzroy, Bryan College. Important work she's doing, mostly volunteering and extending resources from a well-resourced university to our Clarence Fitzroy College, ensuring that we can, of course, do this very important and vital work. But I want to say one other thing in line with what she's promoting. that at this time we are digitizing, is it digitizing or digitalizing? Digitizing our archives. And I want to say, just before you clap, that that project is going on. And in that vein, I want to really honor the legacy of His Excellency, our third Governor General, Sir Edmund Lawrence, who has passed on. Apart from his work with establishing our indigenous bank, which became the largest bank in the OECS at one point from pennies, and that is for our young people to know. He made the last significant contribution of well over 30,000 US dollars to procure the equipment to digitize our archives very, very recently. So even on his deathbed, which he understood, and I think he understood that at the time, that even in that state, he still was patriotic and contributed of his resources to our continued national development. And with that, if we can just do 10 seconds, is it appropriate to just remember him, that even at that point, he was fighting for us to preserve who we are as a people. So let us just recognize him for a few seconds. So I'll ask the Honorable Congress Maynard to tell me when the time is up. We start now.
Seconds.
Thank you very much. And to lastly say, with respect to museum, we have just about to build a Caribbean museum right on the site where Fort Thomas Hotel is. I made the announcement already. I was asked, why not a hotel? I hope tonight's lecture would have shed some light as to why we decided a Caribbean museum from a Kittitian Division perspective on a historical site, and attached to that will also be an archaeologist, just to ensure that whatever is found is properly documented, secured, and be available to us forever. So I will finally say that what has been presented to us here tonight is indeed an excellent example of academia in excellence and patriotism as its best, whether you are here or you are abroad. Thank you once again, Ms. Tavernier.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, and once again, our sincere gratitude to Ms. Liburd Tavernier for sharing her points of reflection with us this evening. As we close, I extend heartfelt thanks to all who played a role in tonight's success, our musicians, presenters, and organizers. Special thanks to our production team, Chameleon Media, and members of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, but most of all, you, our wonderful audience. Thank you for your attendance and participation in this evening's event, including the thousands of persons who are viewing and listening via the internet live stream. This 27th annual Prime Minister's Lecture Series has reminded us that independence is not a single moment in history. It is a living journey of perpetual progress, a journey that requires courage, imagination, and action. As we look ahead under the banner of Independence 42, perpetual progress, a sustainable future in view, let us commit to walking boldly into the future together as one people. This concludes our final program. You all are warmly invited to stay and enjoy networking and light refreshments in the foyer. Good evening and happy independence. Please stand for the departure of our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence M. Drew, and Mistress Diani Prince Drew. I thank you. With a heart filled with St. Paul's pride, I say once again, thank you very much for coming to this evening's event.
I was supposed to trouble you, but I forgot, but I reach you.